Hi, and welcome back to the HaPi Podcast. One of the big objectives of this podcast is to try and remove some of the barriers of knowledge sharing that can exist from time to time within our industries. And in this session, we're going to be looking at innovation or innovative solutions that are offered to either the NHS or to pharmaceutical companies, healthcare companies, and MedTech as well. I'm going to be speaking to a variety of different people who are in a position to offer those different solutions and are currently doing that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hi everyone, again, welcome to another session on the HaPi Podcast. I am delighted this morning to welcome Mr. Scott MacKenzie to the podcast today. Scott and I have just been spending 5 minutes prior to coming on, just talking a little bit about the last time that we met, and how long it's been since we've actually been in conversation. Scott and I have been in conversation recently, obviously about coming on here and talking about what we're going to talk about in a minute. But I'm really delighted and pleased to welcome Scott onto the podcast today. He's looking far smarter than I am, which he'll be able to give you a reason why that is in a minute, because of what he's just about to do today. But the overarching theme of this session in the podcast is to talk about innovation or innovators within our industry, pharma and healthcare, and you'll understand why I've asked Scott to come on onto the podcast today to talk about it, because I believe certainly what he has done and what he is doing currently is innovative and offers the pharma industry an innovative solution. So, Scott, welcome. Thanks for giving me some of your time today before you head off for another busy day. Do you want to just to give a bit of an intro to people in terms of what you've done and also what you're currently doing? And then we'll have a kind of general discussion about innovation and innovators within our industry.
Thanks, Colin. It's a pleasure to be here. It is really lovely. And it's just like thinking back to the first time I walked into your office back in 1997. As a regional healthcare manager, we haven't changed.
We haven't changed. No,
it is lovely, and I'm delighted to give you some time and happy to kind of share the insights. So yeah, I mean,
thank you.
Back in those days when I first met you, I would have been working in the industry. I worked for two companies, 1996 through to about 2006, and across that time I started out carrying the bag. I was a sales representative and was delighted to do that. I had an early entry into sales prior to joining the industry in 96, and then went from rep to trainer. I loved that because that meant I went from having 5 days a week to hit my sales target to having 4, and I did 1 day's training, but they didn't change my target. I thought they would chop 20% off the target. Oh no, target was left the same, and I got told the reason for that, Scott, is we've promoted you because we think you're good. So you will be able to comfortably hit your target in 4 days, and it was great fun. And thankfully, I did invariably hit the targets. And then I got promoted again to regional business manager. And then I was really lucky in that the company that I worked for were absolutely fantastic with me. And I look back with nothing but fondness at my time in the industry, and in particular the company that gave me the break. And I worked in the background really in 12 months' notice, because they knew that they'd honestly said to me, Scott, there will be a time where you will outgrow us and you'll want to move on. But just be honest with us. We'll be honest with you. And that's what happened. I then had 12 months where I looked about to find the right step for me. And they knew that I was out there doing exactly what I said I was doing. I told them if I was going off for an interview, and I moved on. And we had a fantastic relationship with them. And funnily enough, I've been back in this role, working with the same company. And then I moved on to be a key account manager, and then national sales manager. And then at the end of 2005, I left the industry to form the consultancy. Now that was, you could be looked at as by accident. Yes, we went through a reorg, and I had the option to take redundancy and took it without really knowing what I was going to do. But in the background, I'd always wanted to have my own business. That had always been the plan. And had my grandfather, who I had a fantastic relationship with, had Grandad been prepared to leave me his building business, I would probably have been on a slate roof in Edinburgh today, laying bricks. But the old boy was adamant he wasn't going to leave me the building business, despite the fact that nobody else in the family wanted it. So when he retired, he shut the business down. And by that time, I was entering the industry at that point.
Right.
So 2006, I left to form the consultancy. And that's where, again, really fortunate in that I took all the skills that the industry had given me, writing business plans, interpreting often complex data, and being able to present it back in an understandable manner. Really just taking the business skills and helping people develop what were then practice-based commissioning groups. So develop the consortium, put the governance in, and then the business plan, then work to that plan to deliver, and had some huge successes, again, working with industry collaborators. So I used to go back to the industry, when we came across a particular product or project in the NHS, and we want to change the asthma pathway, the COPD pathway, diabetes, heart failure, CKD, whatever it is, I would then say to them, we could get an industry partner who could potentially support you. I'm still doing that to this day. So right now I'm working with what we got. We've got dry eye disease, we've got allergy, we've got asthma, we've got COPD, we've got heart failure, we've got CKD, we've got wound care. A whole host of projects that are being worked on where Scott has looked at the industry and said, I wonder who's got something in that, and then you go and have the conversation and the dialogue.
Yeah.
So stick with kind of 2008, 9, 10, 11, where we're doing a lot in practice-based commissioning, delivering some significant efficiencies, ploughing that back in, pulling in industry partners. Then, as the CCGs emerged, a lot of the practice-based commissioning groups became legal entity GP federations.
Okay.
And there's many of them, places like Newcastle, Hartlepool and Stockton, North Warwickshire, Leicestershire, where I am today. That's why I've got the suit on, because I'm going out this afternoon to work with a primary care network, where I formed the GP federations, and I still work with them to this day. I still, I do a day a month in North Warwickshire. I still tap into Newcastle and Hartlepool. I've got projects running with them. Currently, Leicestershire, got some massive projects going on. And then, of course, what then started to happen is I was getting approached by the NHS side to be more involved in the NHS. And I would say I probably spend 80% of my time working NHS facing, and about 20% of my time working industry facing. And so today, the NHS side would be still forming GP federations and legal entity companies. I'm doing legal entity companies for primary care networks. Anytime we do that, it's always on the basis of, what are you going to do that you can't do now?
Right.
So I'm not going to form them a company, because anybody can do that.
Yeah.
What I do is I look at, so what kind of company are we going to be? How are we going to run it? Who's going to be on the board? And what are we going to do with it that makes a difference? Same with the practice mergers. I handle a lot of practice merger. And there's an article about that this week, funnily enough. We're seeing fewer and fewer practices as they merge together. So we handle a lot of that. And of course, primary care networks is pretty much a massive part of my work. Right now, I work with over 30 networks. I don't do that, a day.
Yeah, no, of course not. Yeah.
Run a workshop, come and help us once a quarter.
Yeah.
There's well over 30 of them that we work with and support. And all the time, there's that parallel line of working with industry.
Fantastic. So, it's a very brave decision, obviously, that you made back in the day to go and set up, which is it's Scott MacKenzie Consultancies, effectively, is what the business is called. Yeah. And I do remember that. I remember the time where, because people at that time, back in the day, going and setting up their own business, when you've been part of something that has been probably quite comfortable, you've got that cushion round about you of pharma, of the industry, thinking, it's fine, you could quite easily stay in the industry for the rest of your life. Albeit, we see people move around quite a lot, either through their own choice or through redundancy. But to go and do that, it's quite brave, and you've continued that, and obviously you'll continue it, I would assume, until you decide to stop. So a very brave decision to go and and step out on your own. But I also know, knowing you relatively well, it was a very calculated, thought out decision to go. Yeah, well, I'm doing this because I know there's a need. There's a need, which is what kind of what we're going to talk about in a second. There's a need for this type of service within the industry, or this type of service within the NHS, which is where you said you spend most of your time, and offering that kind of innovative solution. Something that they either they don't have, and seeing that gap and seeing that opportunity for you to go and offer your services.
Yeah.
To say this is what I can do. So very brave. When you actually made that decision, were you quite anxious about doing it, or did you think, no, let's go, let's do it? Was it all let's?
I'm sat here laughing and giggling because you've taken me back to 2000, right at the end of 2005, and it's kind of ironic because I'd been on holiday with Frances, my wife, and we'd been talking about the fact that at that time I used to hop on a plane either on a Monday and fly back on a Thursday, or hop on a plane on a Tuesday and fly back on a Friday, and spend 4 days a week in head office for the company that I work for. And I loved it. They were a great company. Again, as you say, quite comfortable. You get your flights paid for, your company cars paid for, you've got expenses, your hotels, all of that's accounted for. So it's really easy. And we'd been on holiday, and I was saying, I think it's time for another move. I think, it's time. I can't see a natural next step for me here. Maybe it's time to think about moving on. And I literally landed back from holiday on the Monday morning and got told that we were going into consultation. End of September, so October, November, December, company's going to restructure, there's going to be redundancy. And I actually thought about it and kind of said, well, maybe now's the time to see if I can get a redundancy package in, and I'll move on. And that's exactly what happened. But the reason I smiled when you said it was because I was terrified. I had no idea what I was going to do. And it's a bit like, so where do I turn? And what I did was I went to people that I trusted. I went to people that I valued their opinion. And I suppose one of the standouts for me there was a guy who's been a mate now for well over 20 years, James Kingsland. James is a GP up in the Wirral. I think he's just not long retired. I'm due to see him we saw him earlier in the year. We're due to spend a weekend with him and his wife at the beginning of September. And James said to me, Scott, you do know the NHS is screaming out for people that have got your kind of skills. You could maybe go into the NHS, you could do some consultancy. Obviously, you could go back to pharma. And that was where my comfort zone was. Your point exactly. Scott's comfort zone was, I'm going to look for another role in pharma. And then I went, James, consultancy, what's that? And James explained to me really what I do now. And I was like, I've got no idea. And he's like, look, I'm doing some work with the Department of Health just now around creating practice-based commissioning groups and consortia. Would you help us put the templates together? And that was how it started. I worked with James, got some cracking insight. He was absolutely brilliant in terms of insight and challenge to what I did. And then before I knew it, he booked me a speaking engagement in the Hilton in Gateshead to go and speak to what I was told would be no more than 15 to 20 practice managers about practice-based commission. And I kind of looked at James and was like, you're kidding. He's like, Scott, there is now nobody that knows it better. All the work you've done with me, all the interpretation you've given it, there's nobody knows it any better, so you go. So off I went. And at the end of that meeting, I was approached by people in the audience. Now, the thing I hasten to add was I was told 15, maximum of 20. 89 people turned up. Standing room only at the back because everybody was desperate to know what this practice-based...
Yeah, but what did you think we turned up and you saw that amount?
I was just like, I am going to die. This is awful. But hold it together. You're thoroughly professional. That's where all the industry training comes in. Delivered what was obviously a very good session because at the end of that, I ended up working with Newcastle North, Newcastle East, Gateshead West, Sunderland Coalfields, and there was one other. I'm trying to think what the other one was. There was another one, 6 PBC groups. And suddenly I found myself forming practice-based commissioning consortiums all over the Northeast.
Good for you.
At the same time, back to your point, Scott's comfort zone. Scott's still thinking, I must look for that job in the industry.
Get
back to that.
Yeah.
So I was always saying, well, I'll do this, while I look for that job in the industry. And that's the kind of standing joke at home is that I'm still looking for that job back in the industry because 17 years on, when I got to the end of the first year and then looked ahead and I had a whole year's worth of work booked ahead, supporting and working with groups, it just became, this is the natural path to continue on, and I'm still doing it. Thankfully,
good
still.
For you. Good for
I'm
you.
loving it.
And, yeah, that's good. Well, you just said that. I'm loving it, and I think, we're not really not to talk about the recruitment asset, but as long as you, on the whole, love what you do, enjoy what you do, that comes out naturally. It's not an effort for that to come out in terms of what you do. And then that leads on to, obviously what the work that you do with your customers, certainly from your perspective, because if they can see that's naturally coming out in you in terms of you really enjoy what you do, they will engage with you. They'll work with you. We see that from our perspective as well, and you must see that. So if you naturally enjoy what you do and there's no effort to it, then they will engage with you. They will switch on with you in terms of what you do. So in terms of what you do just now, and within pharma is innovative in some ways, in terms of the solution that you offer, and how you and sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you bring pharma and the NHS together on occasions. Would that be right? Would that be right?
That's absolutely what we do. I have a vast network in both camps, vast network in NHS. I've got a huge customer base. And as I say, sometimes I might not have worked with them for 6 months, 9 months, maybe over 12 months, but I've still, because I build, all my relationships are built on a foundation of mutual trust. That's fundamentally how I work. I trust them, they trust me. I know what the customers are looking for. So when Colin approaches me and says, Scott, can you come and work with us as, pharmaceutical company A? This is what we do. This is where we work. Do you think you can help and support us? And I'd end up agreeing that we'll do some training and education and upskilling for the team. And then we'll go on to do maybe some more closer one-to-one work, working with, key account managers, market access teams, senior salespeople, regional managers, regional business directors, and so on, and the brand teams and the marketing teams. I then will get them access into the NHS.
Right,
and
okay.
What we do is we align the customers. So literally just last week, to give you an example, I'm down in Basingstoke. I'm working with a primary care network. We're putting together a legal entity limited company for them, because what they're worried about is our network is growing, Scott. We now do almost 2 million quid a year between additional roles, the enhanced access budget, the network budget itself, the management. All of that is now getting a bit big for this all to be sat on one lead practice. Can you help us put together a legal entity? So I spent some time with them, just short meetings, looking at the governance. What kind of company do we want to be? What kind of, is it for profit? Is it not for profit? What kind of shares are we going to have? Who's going to be the directors? How do we appoint them, remove them? What are the rules for the practices? How do we reflect the network schedules? All of that kind of stuff. And at the end of the third meeting, they then said to me, Scott, we now want to tap into the other bit of you. How can you help us? And the reality for industry is the NHS is drowning in work. That's the key to this, is it's absolutely drowning in workload. What it's looking for is projects and added value that will alleviate the workload pressure. So we either avoid appointments, we avoid referrals, we avoid admissions. Clearly, we're improving patient outcomes. We may be tackling inequalities. So what the industry has to do now is add that value. And that's the innovation. That's the approach that I take is I look at, let's pick something ridiculous, Colin, so we don't get into any controversy. We're going to change the itchy back pathway. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So currently, we see patients with itchy back syndrome 5 or 6 times in general practice. Then we give in and we refer them off to hospital, and the hospital look at them and they can't do much with them, but they'll make a couple of changes and then they'll send them back to general practice, and that goes an ongoing cycle. Then along comes company A, who says, we've got a solution in itchy back. Now, rather than talk about the product, rather than have that conversation about, we'll put the product in the middle of the table, I'm going to talk to my product and tell you exactly what it does and how it. Because what that does is it leaves the poor customer trying to work out, okay, so which patient am I putting it in? What agenda is it going to sit on?
Yeah.
I'm too busy, can't work that out. No, it's the easiest answer in the world. Whereas, if you turn up and we go, notice that in itchy back syndrome, you see the patients 5 or 6 times, and then you probably give in and you refer them off to secondary care. And secondary care not got really many options. They work with them, so they'll probably prescribe our product. But actually, what we could do is, if we work with you directly, Dr. X, Primary Care Networks A, GP Federation, actually, if we work with you, what we could do is we could train and upskill your teams. And instead of it being the GPs that see these people, it could be the nurse, the pharmacist, the physician associate, somebody else in the team. So we're alleviating workload pressure on you as a GP. They will be able to see them once. will then make the prescribing change to this, to this product. And what that's going to do is reduce your appointments by 80%. So instead of seeing them 5 times, you'll see them once. Your referrals will collapse. There's probably about 10 to 20% of patients that will come back who might then need some additional input, but we'll get the hospital to support that. And rather than refer them, we'll have an online consultation. So again, we're avoiding workload. You know what? They're all ears. And that is pretty much a true reflection of one of the companies that I'm working with just now. I connected them with Newcastle because I knew this is the kind of project they'd be interested in. Newcastle then said, you know what? That's fantastic. We'll get the hospital involved. I'll get the hospital consultant. Actually, might even get the professor involved. Then we'll engage medicines optimization in the CCG, and we'll have a look at how we put this together as a project. And as we're getting to the end of the meeting, we're about to hang up, and the GP lead that we were talking to went, wait a minute, whoa. And I was like, was there a problem? No, there's no problem. You're going to tell me what the product is. And that
okay. That's interesting.
They had bought in completely to reduced appointments, reduced referrals, reduced complexity, shifting the workload. All of that was all they heard. Nobody had ever mentioned the product to them. The problem it would solve.
Yeah.
And they had to stop us and say, going to tell me what it is. And I said, well, we can, but why? Because I want to start doing it tomorrow.
Yeah. That's brilliant. So back in the day, you'd walk in with the bag with the detail aid.
That's it.
You present that detail aid. Yeah, can I just show you this detail aid? Or now, obviously, that for me is hit the nail on the head from an innovative solution perspective, because as you say, the NHS is looking for better, dare I say, to say cheaper, more cost efficient ways of doing things, and you're getting in, you're doing that, but at the same time, it's meeting the needs of the NHS customer, but the pharma company is getting in front of that customer, which, as we all know, getting access is not easy.
No,
getting access is tricky. And if you are there in a way on occasions, to help them with that, fantastic. There's a no-brainer in many ways in terms of both win from that type of solution. And are you seeing, when you're obviously working close to the NHS, that you say they're drowning for work, so they're looking for more innovative solutions, they're looking for more innovators to come in and say, we'll help you with that problem, we'll help you with that solution? Are you seeing that more and more?
Do you know what, Colin? That's an absolutely great question. And it's one that I was asked literally last week by one of the industry clients that approached me. And my answer to that was then, as it is now, absolutely. I have never seen the NHS as a whole more willing to collaborate and partner with industry, but only when the pitch is right. If the pitch isn't right, and I watched it, I mentioned this to you earlier, I watched a company drown a couple of weeks ago where they turned up and talked really about the product and eventually got interrupted. And the client asked, and I the reason I was there was I was actually in working with a client. So I just happened to be there. But the client interrupted them to say, look, I'm really sorry to interrupt. I hate to do that. But can you tell me which of my agendas are you pitching this against? So is it the primary care network days? Is it the investment and impact fund? Are you tackling inequalities? Is it something in QOF? Is it something that's going to reduce my workload? I'm not clear. I don't understand. And they looked at each other and kind of went, well, I'm not sure. And I'm thinking, oh, guys, it's the impact and investment fund. That's where what you've got sits squarely in investment and impact fund. And if you tag on to tackling inequalities, and I know you can offer them people, I know you can offer them some pharmacist support, pitch those 3 things at them. Put the product to one side, pitch that, they're going to sign up. And this is a client who pre-pandemic would repeatedly say to me, Scott, I get that that's a great project that you're working on somewhere else, but we don't work with industry. And now they are not only open to industry, they've got what we got one in, I better not say, because people are then trying to work out who Scott's working with. We've got 3 projects working with them right now, all with industry support. All of them have got industry support. And this is a client that would historically have just gone, we don't work with industry. But now, because they're drowning in workload, they're interested. And the thing to keep in mind, and you touched on it in the question, is that when you're going in, healthcare professionals, when they prescribe or they refer, what they're actually doing is pursuing an outcome on behalf of the patient. And that's the message that I give my NHS clients is, put the cost to one side,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Because the cheap drug isn't cheap if it's not effective.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no point in having a race to the bottom of the funnel on cost if all that happens is the patient hits a poor outcome, needs a referral, ends up with a non-elective admission, ends up with advanced progressive disease that costs a whole load of referral and money. So what we've got to look at before we start just willy-nilly changing drugs is, what outcome am I looking to achieve? So I work on the basis with the NHS of, we're doing A to get to B. Okay, if B doesn't happen, what's C to get to D? If D doesn't happen, what's E to get to F? Oh, if F doesn't happen, now we're referring them, but we're referring a fully worked up patient where we've run out of options. And that's a very simplistic A, B, C, D, E, F. It's not always as easy as that, but we're pursuing an outcome. And that's where I keep medicines optimization on board as well, is there's no point in having the cheap if all it does is create referral appointments, admissions. What we have to look at is, what's the next step? So we're spending our product, our budget wisely, pursuing outcomes on behalf of the patients, because you know, and I know, a patient that's getting a poor outcome does not sit at home. They don't sit at home and feel unwell. They're back into general practice.
Absolutely, yeah.
If they're waiting to be diagnosed and we've not got rapid access to diagnostics, and we're having fainting spells and dizzy spells and being found on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m, we don't just keep doing that. We come back. So if you're pursuing an outcome, if you're not achieving the outcome, you have to think, what's the next step? And that, again, is where I work with the industry partner to look at. So this is the whole pathway of care, just as you described it, that complete pathway of care. Every single step, the cost against every step. We know exactly what the cost of each step is, and we know what the next step is if the one before it isn't working. We've got a complete end-to-end pathway, and we embed products, equipment, apps, technology into the pathways. Then what you get from an NHS perspective is a high-quality, completely standardized approach without any unwarranted variation. And it means that Colin and Scott are now interchangeable. You're using the same kit, pathways, referral forms, step-up care, step-down care, patient education, discharge process. Everything is standardized. So now we're trying to increase capacity in the NHS as well. So that's the kind of value that our industry colleagues have got to add. It cannot be about a product.
No, that just in terms of how you're engaging with me here just now, Scott, it just shows me naturally how passionate you are about getting that partnership between industry and NHS absolutely nailed and getting it right. Because I think, at times, the pharma industry sometimes Justify comes under a little bit of criticism, in terms of, the things that, the perceptions that people have, and on times I get that and I can understand that. But until you're actually involved in it, and certainly involved in the way that you're in it, the way that we're involved as well, and you can actually see the way in which NHS and industry, pharma, healthcare, whatever, can really genuinely work very, very well together. And always having the outcome of creating a winning solution for the patient. And so many people probably watching this or listening to this have either had treatment on the NHS or have been at that side of the NHS, and they can see that. They come out of it and they go, I had a fantastic experience in the NHS. And when you look back and you go, actually, part of that is because of, not on every occasion, but part of that is because of, there's a pharma company behind that. There's a pharma company behind that vaccine.
Absolutely.
There's a pharma company behind that drug. There's a pharma company. There's a tech company behind that bit of surgery that you've just gone through. And bringing all of that together takes time, takes people like you, takes a bit of innovation on occasions to make that happen. So what has been really refreshing for me today, Scott, and I genuinely mean this, is just to see how still you have a passion for making that happen, and a passion for making sure that the work that's done within the NHS, and when you bring in pharma, that it's clean, that it works really well, that it's effective, and it's providing that innovative solution. And that is obviously what you're doing, and going by the shirt and tie, that's what you're about to go and do today as well. Listen, I'm conscious of time. I really appreciate the time that you've given me today. You got a full day. I know you don't necessarily need to tell me where you're going and what you're doing today, but a full day ahead have you today?
I don't mind telling you where. So I'm down in Leicestershire just now. So I'm doing a lot of work across the Leicestershire and Rutland integrated care system. So we've done some work at system level, at place level, and across the most of the 26 primary care networks. And that's what I'm going off to do today. I'm going off to work with a primary care network from kind of lunchtime through to back at 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. A really full agenda, looking at the network DES, the investment and impact fund. But the big chunk of the afternoon is how they're going to respond to the enhanced access requirements. So contractually, the network is going to have to offer 6:30 at night till 8 o'clock, Monday to Friday, and a Saturday 9 till 5. They either have to provide it themselves or they can subcontract it away to another provider. Now, this particular network definitely wants to provide this for itself. So we're going to look at results of the staff survey in terms of who's prepared to do the hours and kind of how often. We're going to have a look at the services. We're going to have a look at the data, so the population health data, to see what our population health need is, because that will vary from place to place, and then try and create the proposal for commissioners against that, the specification and against that data. So it's a really interesting day ahead. And I think I said this to you at the beginning. There is absolutely an opportunity for industry in all of this, because a lot of the value-added services, a lot of the tools, the audit tools, the data, the teams of pharmacists and nurses and supply that they offer are absolutely ripe for doing, some and particularly weekend service offers. So I've no doubt we'll get industry partners involved ahead. But listen, it's been an absolute pleasure.
It has indeed. It's been a real pleasure. And listen, let's be open to talking again in the future.
Absolutely,
there's always changes going on in our industry, and what we certainly say to people, come on here. If there's something you want to talk about it, come on, let's talk about it. And let's remove some of those barriers of knowledge sharing that can exist in pharma from time to time as well.
Absolutely happy to do that anytime. I really approachable, even to industry. I do tons on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to answer people's questions. I get people either messaging me or they'll respond to a post on LinkedIn. I'll quite happily respond back as well. I'm quite open to sharing.
Good man, Scott. Listen, thanks for your time, and we'll wrap up our conversation there. Have a great day. Take care.
You too. Thanks again.
Bye bye.
Cheers now.